Shout out to ENYO-D for using my code on 𝗏𝗡𝗍𝗏.com, and if you'd like to use my code on 𝗏𝗡𝗍.com, you can check the link in the description to support the channel. Okay, thank you, love you, bye! With the launch of Witch Queen, Bungie completely remade the world loot pool from the ground up. Where it was previously a pool of weapons all piled from random seasons, it's now a pool of new weapons that are based off of Destiny's Foundries, 𝗁𝗏, 𝗁𝗏, 𝗏𝗏, etc. When Season of the Haunted launched, Bungie added 4 new Foundry weapons to this pool, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at them one by one, ranking them from best to worst, and going over what their best god rolls are. This video is only going to be covering the new weapons added to the world loot pool, so if you'd like to see reviews on the other 12, yeah, there's quite a few of them, then check out my video from last season, link in the description. Anyways, as always, before we jump into it, if you're looking for a channel completely dedicated to PvE content for Destiny, and you're not already subscribed, definitely feel free to do so to make me feel all warm and fuzzy. And without further ado, let's jump into this. First up, as always, before we talk about today's weapons, we of course need to go over how to get them. Now, with this being the world loot pool, there are very limited avenues of actually farming these out, so a lot of it will literally just be left up to luck on whether or not you get the roll you want. World loot, as implied, is loot that you get out in the world for doing pretty much anything, completing activities, engrams from killing enemies, all that kind of stuff is how you're going to come across these weapons. Thankfully though, there are a few methods in which you can better your chances at landing a god roll. Firstly, always keep an eye out for vendors that are selling weapons. Think of the gunsmith or 𝗁𝗏. For example, 𝗔𝗔𝗍𝗏 was a world loot hand cannon back in Season of the Lost, and the gunsmith actually sold its god roll twice during that season. And the same can happen with any other world loot item, so make sure you're checking up on both the gunsmith or 𝗁𝗏 at their respective resets. Secondly, the only other way to really heighten your chances at getting what you want would be through focusing umbral engrams at the helm. The world loot pool is of course consisting of both armor and weapons, so at the helm you can actually focus weapons specifically and try to increase your chances for minimal cost. Outside of those methods though, there isn't really much you can do except for hope that luck is on your side, and that's kind of what makes getting world loot god rolls so exciting, is they don't really happen that often. With you guys knowing how to get your hands on world loot though, let's go ahead and take a look at all the weapons for today's video. Kicking today's video off, we have what is a huge contender for my favorite scout rifle in the game right now, the Staccato 46 𝗁𝗏 Scout. This 180 scout rifle belongs to the Solar Element family, which honestly isn't all that populated with competition. Other than Staccato, we have the Pleiades Corrector, which is just ass, Trustee, which is fine. I just dislike redirection as a damage perk. I'm sure some of you guys might disagree, but I just don't really care for it. And finally, the Vision of Confluence, which is a more than solid option, and you guys have heard me simp this weapon a lot in the past. The Staccato, however, definitely feels like it has a leg up on its Solar brothers and sisters, as it offers a role that no other scout in the game can currently get, and you guys already know we rockin' with that 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏. Now, before diving deeper into that role specifically, taking a general look at the perks on this thing, we have Outlaw and Triple Tap in the first column, as well as Explosive Payload and Incandescent in the second. Now, Shoot to Loot might also be a good perk option in the first column if you're rocking Incandescent or Dragonfly. Now, overall, I'd probably recommend Triple Tap Explosive for GM content outside this season, and Outlaw Incandescent for all other content in the game. Triple Tap and Incandescent is fine, it's the one that I have, but Triple Tap implies that you're doing sustained damage on a beefy target, so you're better off combining that with a, perk that's just going to increase your damage just flatly across the board without needing to actually get a kill like Explosive Payload. Now, although Staccato is a really good weapon overall, it and others like it are practically godlike this season, specifically because of the seasonal mods we have, and you definitely should be taking advantage of them if you're running an incandescent roll on literally any weapon. As you'll see in the gameplay for this weapon, I'm absolutely demolishing every enemy inside of 𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏 due to not only my Solar subclass build, but because of the seasonal artifact mods Solar Fulmination and Rays of Precision that are feeding off of each other. Rays allows all targets of mine to ignite when I'm radiant, and Fulmination makes those ignitions bigger. Combine that with Incandescent as well as subclass fragments like Char, Ashes, Empyrean, and Torches, and you have yourself a ridiculous build going. Don't let this build and others like it being temporary sway you from 𝗁𝗏𝗏 next season though, as it's definitely the best option we have for this element of scout in my opinion, and most everybody should get their hands on one. Moving on from 𝗁𝗏𝗏, we have ourselves a new combat bow that's just dumb fun, and that is the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗡. Also, if I'm mispronouncing that name, don't criticize me in the comments. I took to Google and apparently it's the scientific name for an octopus or some shit, and I don't study octopuses. Wait a minute. Anyways, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is a lightweight frame bow, meaning the draw time is insanely quick, and you have increased movement speed when equipped. It's also the first stasis element bow that we've ever seen in Destiny. Taking a look at the perks, you'll see that this probably isn't a bow that you would use inside master content, but pretty good for more casual things. The first column features shoot to loot, which I'd imagine might work with headstone, although I'm unsure as I don't have the role, so let me know in the comments, as well as rangefinder. And rangefinder will increase the speed of your arrows when ADS'd, as well as help with your headshot magnetism at longer ranges, so that's probably the perk that I'd personally prefer. The second column features Adrenaline Junkie, Golden Tricorn, which is a bit more annoying to proc on stasis in my opinion, so I'd just avoid it, as well as Headstone, which is always a fun time. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is definitely a fun bow if you're looking to change things up, and I highly recommend a Headstone roll with Whisper of Fissures and Rending on your stasis subclass to make those crystals absolutely pop. Overall, not something that you'd use super late game, but a really fun change of pace with nice stasis synergy. Up next from 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, let's talk about a weapon with one of the weirdest names I've ever seen in Destiny, the ENYO-D Kinetic SMG. Yes, I know, listen, I'm very immature, but if you watch my channel a lot, you already know this. Now, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this thing, but if we're being honest, it's mostly hate. And that's not necessarily because it's a bad weapon, it's just that it's so mediocre that it pisses me off because I can't choose whether it's good or bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's good in some areas, it's bad in some areas. Let's complain about it. I mean, let's talk about it. See, ENYO-D is a 600 RPM SMG without any of the benefits that I'd like to see inside of 600 RPMs. Normally, when you have an SMG of this archetype, you'd like to see them balance out the slower rate of fire with a longer range, making them viable from farther away since you just can't spray and pray up close. But ENYO-D doesn't really have that. Taking a look at the pinnacle of 600 RPMs, the 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, you'll see that the stats across the board for ENYO are just super poor. 10 less range, 7 less stability, less handling, 6 less reload, worse zoom, and a bad recoil pattern. On top of all this, it's a kinetic weapon, which kinetics are just so boring nowadays as they don't have any special properties about them other than slightly more damage to non-shielded opponents. No subclass synergy, no breaking shields easier, none of that. And then we take a look at the perk pool just to see overall mediocrity, with the first column featuring Feeding Frenzy and the last column having multi-kill clip, rampage, and surrounded. Like, overall, it's a fine SMG, but it doesn't do anything special other than have a funny name. If you like to rock weapons that are more on the meta spectrum, I'd steer away from this SMG, but if you're looking to switch things up, ENYO is a weapon that can get the job done if needed, but it just doesn't bring anything special to the table. Finally, to end things off, we have a sexy looking sniper rifle from our friends at Omolon, the GALLU RR3 Adaptive Frame. As you all know, snipers fall into two different categories. You have the bursty style damage as seen on guns like Frozen Orbit or Succession, as well as the category of sustained DPS with weapons like the Fugue or 𝗵𝗔𝗍𝗍 or Thoughtless. GALLU basically falls into the category of sustained DPS sniper, although I'm unsure how desirable it really is, as other snipers in this category just do it better due to perk selection. Regardless, GALLU rolls with Overflow and Focus Fury, which isn't a role to scoff at all. There's just better snipers out there for other guns in the same slot. If you're liking on a good DPS sniper though and come across that role, it's definitely worth holding on to. I have it so low on the list though, as I feel as this probably is going to be the least used weapon in the video, as more people will probably gravitate towards something like ENYO than people actually choosing this as a DPS sniper of choice. The only real time you ever need weapons like that is in scenarios like day 1 raids, and if you're battling it out inside of a raid on day 1, chances are you'll be rocking something much better for that DPS sniper role, and something much easier to get as well. Anyways guys, that's going to do it for me today. Today we looked over all 4 of the new Foundry weapons that popped up in the world loot pool, gave them a sleazy little ranking, and talked about their best god rolls. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the last weapon set for Season of the Haunted that needed to be covered on my channel, so expect different styled videos moving forward, as well as some deeper dives on individual guns for reviews, and as well as my usual top must-have list. Anyways, if you watched the video all the way up until this point, thank you so much for your watch time and supporting the channel. As always, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, and shout out to my tier 2s, Homebase, Onrock, Crunchwrap, Admist, Vile, and John, as well as my tier 3s, Neon, Cinco, Glumia, and Austin. I figured I'd switch it up this time. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.